What's up guys, JV2017 here, bringing you another Destiny tips and tricks video, and today we're talking about weekly Nightfall Strikes, why they are so important, and what kind of incredible loot you can get from completing these activities. So first off, let's talk a little bit about the preliminary stuff. Vanguard weekly Nightfall Strikes unlock at level 24, however they have a level 28 difficulty, so keep in mind that you really shouldn't even be trying this thing unless you're maybe level 26. Honestly, I recommend 27 or higher, of course. 28, of course, would be ideal or above that, but I wouldn't even touch this thing unless you are level 26 and you have a good group of people with you, because this is quite a challenge. So now we're going to look at some of the modifiers, the typical modifiers that come along with the weekly Nightfall Strike. So the one that is almost always here, I think it is almost always here, is epic. So this very clearly means heavy shielded enemies and highly aggressive enemies appear in greater numbers. So enemies that normally don't have shields will have some kind of elemental shield. Case in point, Shanks, those little annoying floating robots, they have shields in weekly Nightfall Strikes if they appear in that certain strike. So that is a pain. And the other one that always shows up is some kind of element burn. So for this week it's arc burn, but it could be solar burn or void burn. And so this increases damage from any source, which means your enemies could have this kind of weapon as well by 300%. That is 3 times the damage. So if it's arc burn like it is this week and an enemy hits you with an arc weapon, you need to watch out. And so I'll get a little bit more to arc burn, why it's so important, in a second here. And the next one that's going to be on every single Nightfall Strike is, of course, the Nightfall Modifier. If everyone dies, you return to orbit, you have to start all the way over, there are no checkpoints. So it's very important to stay alive in these Nightfall Strikes. Some other ones that do appear, obviously this week there's Juggler. You can't get ammo drops for the weapon that you're using, which means you have to switch weapons, hence the name Juggler. And then this other one we have is Angry. I think I've seen this on Destiny every single week, but Minions of the Darkness will not flinch. So if you get a headshot, they won't be like, ow, that hurt. They'll just keep fighting you, which is kind of annoying. Some other things that aren't here this week that could show up, Light Switch. This is a big one. Minions of the Darkness deal a ton more melee damage, so you don't want to get within melee range of your enemies. And then another one that can show up is Anger Issues. Minions of the Darkness display heightened aggression, so I guess they just flank you more is basically what's going on there. So as I go to the tower, let's talk a little bit more about element burn and why it's so important. So really my tip here for the different kinds of element burn is, as you are leveling up your character in your pursuit to 30, really try to stock up on as many elements for each type of weapon as you can. So for example, I have a Void Sniper here, an Arc Sniper here, and a Solar Fusion Rifle. The reason I have all these is because I want the variety based on either what kind of shielded enemies I'm facing or what kind of arc burn I'm facing. And arc burn shows up in more than just the weekly Nightfall, so it's very important to have a nice variety. See, down here, I'm trying to get my nice variety. I just don't have an arc heavy weapon, which is what I kind of need. And very rarely do you see a kind of element on these weapons, so keep that in mind when you are, in this game. But basically, stock up on each kind of element for each weapon type. When I say weapon type, I just mean the distinction between primary, special, and heavy. If you want to go above and beyond the call, you could even get all three different types for a shotgun, all 3 different types for a sniper, all 3 different types for a fusion rifle. You guys get the gist. So now the rewards. So you have a very high chance in this to get legendary and exotic gear. Case in point, I got my Hard Light exotic auto rifle, which I love. It is fantastic, from doing a weekly Nightfall Strike. That's how easy it was. And the thing is, you can do these every week. Of course, you can only do it once. The first time per every week that you do it, you have a chance at these rewards. You can't replicate that, but you know, you can really get some great stuff from here. If you don't get legendary or exotic gear, they will give you 12 ascendant materials. It could be shards or material, or could be shards or energy, either or, but that's also an option, kind of the lesser of them, but 12 is a lot as well for those materials, so that's kind of an okay compensation. Finally, you will get Radiant Light, which will show up here, the little triangle icon, and then your helmet will be on fire, and it will increase all experience gains. This has to do with experience on each individual piece of gear that you have equipped, and your subclasses. However, if you're completing Nightfall Strikes and you don't have each subclass maxed out, I don't know what you've been doing, because it's very easy to max out each one if you just flip-flop them whenever you're turning in things that gain XP. So that was a lot of information, guys. I hope you learned something new from this video, and if you did, remember to click that like button. I'd really appreciate it. Also, this is your #1 destination for Destiny content. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more of that. Talk to you guys next time. Peace.